Okay, let's kick this off, shall we? Good morning, and thank you very much for attending the webinar in partnership with Sophos on the evolution of cybersecurity in the cloud. I wanted to first introduce myself, Andrew Ward, IT advisor here at ADM Computing, and my esteemed partner in security, Chris Howell, public cloud lead at Sophos. As said earlier on, we're operating a live Q&A during this webinar, which will aim to answer at the end, and all answers will be emailed out following today's event, so please take part in the chat. To start off, I wanted to give you a little bit of information about who we are and what we do for those who are not already familiar. So who are we? We're ADM. We're an IT services support company based in Kent, covering London, South East and further. We established in 1984, so we're 35 years old. I'd say that's a good achievement. 70 staff, 3/4 of whom are technical and involved in service delivery. We're a Microsoft Gold partner, and our competencies involve not only exams, but actually deploying the technologies. We're also a proud Sophos Platinum partner, and again, with experience in supporting and deploying the technologies that we're here to talk about today. We're a highly rated partner with many other industry leading vendors, and we are also 9001 accredited, 14,001 accredited, and 27,001 accredited, and also Cyber Essentials Plus accredited. So when it comes to security, we take it very seriously, and if I do say so myself, we know what we're talking about. Now I'd like to hand over to Chris Howell from Sophos, who will be taking a look at business responsibility in the cloud.
Perfect, thank you, Andrew. So firstly, to the guys at ADM, can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you.
Perfect, good, sorry. The team auto-muted me and I wanted to check I could auto-mute off. So thank you very much for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here today talking to some of your clients or potential clients. And as Andrew alluded to, everyone, I'm Chris Howell and I'm from the public cloud team at Sophos, and welcome to today's session. Today we hope to set you on a track to basically wipe out some very avoidable weaknesses in cloud security posture. That can create breach points for criminals to launch potential attacks within your cloud environment. You see, in the eyes of the adversary, your cloud migration actually brought you one step closer to them. There's the potential for them to search, target these gaps, security across it's a much more dispersed attack service over the internet. But by the end of today's session, we will show you how this is all avoidable. And to be honest, isn't much different to your on-premise system. So criminals are already taking advantage of potential weak points. Sometimes that is underlined, and actually has been underlined in our recent survey called State of Cloud Security here at Sophos, where 70% of organizations who are hosting data or workloads in the cloud actually told us that they'd suffered some form of security incident in the last 12 months. A level of threat that moved very little between countries surveyed across the world. And this is just a small sample of the 26 surveys that we've covered. As you can see in the UK, specifically for this session, 61% of those UK businesses we surveyed had mentioned they had a breach during this time. And I am going to come back to this survey throughout the session to give you some other statistics around what we're seeing in the market. So, surprisingly, when we then think about this, detection and response of threats is a top concern for customers. And actually, predominantly 4 out of 10 clients that we spoke to, this came top of the list. And that's partly because of this fragmented landscape when it comes to cloud security. Customers are either beginning with point products, they're trying to replicate security, or you as customers will move and you'll try and replicate security that you currently have on premise in the cloud, or what you were getting out of your kind of private data centers. And then you're going to try and lift and shift applications and workloads into the public cloud. You then find teams will try and build out a cloud security strategy from inside and out of the cloud provider's own ecosystem, using multiple separate tools that are available from each provider. So these could be specific security tools from the likes of Azure. You'll alternatively, or potentially as well as, look at expensive skills in developing custom ad hoc systems in-house. You'll create your own projects. You'll use open source tools as well as what you're getting from the vendors. This then creates a very fractured visibility of the cloud. It's not very efficient, and obviously it's a very high overhead for operational teams, and it's very likely to lead to potential gaps in your security posture. This is why it's important to have a layered defense when it comes to security. Managed through a single console for better visibility, one able to provide consistent, efficient security, managed across multiple clouds. So you saw before, these consoles can manage not only on-premise and hosted environments, but also Azure, AWS, Google, and other platforms with some of our technologies. And that's actually exactly what Sophos brings to the table, as I said. We've got a single platform already managing over 150,000 customers worldwide. And basically, the Sophos platform boils down to 3 elements within a business. Firstly, we start with a complete portfolio of cloud products seen here on the screen. This includes EDR, MTR, firewalls, cloud. We're talking specifically cloud. We'll talk cloud workload protection and cloud security posture management. With SaaS and email security and other areas built in. This protection extends to areas such as endpoint, mobile devices, to ensure access to cloud services are always secure. The second element, as I mentioned, is that single management platform. So Sophos Central, which some of you may be using today, through which you can manage all of these protection products. So everything's available through one single interface. The third element is our integrating all of these together. We call this our Synchronized security platform because it shares threat information, system health, and security intelligence between next-gen products in order to automatically adapt and respond to the potential latest security challenges. Together, it delivers unmatched protection for efficiency not only on-premise, but as I mentioned, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and actually more recently, Kubernetes. The layered defense approach provides best protection against attacks that are hitting organizations today. As you can see here, those attacks being reported by organizations in the recent survey I mentioned before are nothing new. As you move to the cloud, so do the criminals, right? They're extending what works already into new attack surfaces and trying different ways to compromise your systems. But as those threats evolve, new strains emerge, the artificial intelligence embedded into our Sophos protection can quickly find those, identifies those potential risks, and block those threats currently unknown to us. But while these threats are recognizable, the methods used to get into cloud environments to launch attacks is a different matter. So let's have a quick look now. And what I want to show you is actually how the attackers are getting in and some best practices that you guys can learn moving forward as you continue to adopt the cloud. So now, as you can see here, accidental exposure continues to plague organizations. And this is reflected in one of the survey responses. Misconfigurations of cloud assets, which create gaps in that security infrastructure, are being exploited. And 66% of attacks, well, 33% of those attacks used unstolen credentials to get into cloud providers and launch an attack on their systems. So with misconfigurations being new to many of us, and obviously cloud being new to many of you, let's have a quick look now at why this is such a big problem for customers. Let's start with on-premise or private data center setups. Sophos, one of the ways we explain this is we like to think of it as a single secure building like this, where all the access goes in and out of one single point, right? As you can see in the picture, there is one door, one way in and out of this system. Now, that's the same with your network, where all of your traffic at the moment is likely to be going in and out through well-defined egress, ingress point, or whichever way around it's supposed to be said, ingress, egress point, all protected by your firewalls from threats. Nice and straightforward. Now, the cloud, unfortunately, does blow that apart. So in the cloud, you need to think of your network more like this more modern building, where the cloud has multiple windows, multiple doors, and equal multiple potential access points for someone or something to get in and out of your system. So all it takes is someone to misconfigure a route table in your firewall, and now your virtual machines running private server workloads or hosted sensitive data are suddenly accessible from the internet for an attacker to breach you. Plus, you're potentially likely to induce new features, so shared storage, containers, database services, and again, more frequently these days, things like serverless functions. And these services actually can't have a security agent running on them. So your surface area for attack becomes much larger and more dispersed. And these servers can easily be, or services, sorry, can easily be misconfigured to allow public access to the internet. Ports can be left open, data unencrypted, and so on. So moving assets can technically move them one step closer to criminals. And attackers are actively searching for weak points in your workload security through automated searches that can be found on the internet. We, again, reverting back to the survey, we found in this recent research project where we as Sophos spun up 10 different virtual servers spanning different geographical data centers. Nothing secure on there, right? We weren't hosting any specific information. We just wanted to see if the stats we were giving out were real. Now, we monitored and we found over this 30-day period this many attempted logins in these regions. So over that period of 30 days, there were around 4.3 million failed login attempts via RDP into these siloed fake systems that we spun up, which roughly works out to 13 logins per minute, or about 757 per hour. With the fastest attempt was 52 seconds in Sao Paulo. Ohio in the US was slightly just under 5 minutes, California under 15, and the UK sat at around 10 minutes, so somewhere in between. So again, as you're spinning up services, always think security first, because it may not happen in 10 days, it may not happen in 10 years, but it could just as easily happen in 10 minutes. So you need to remain secure through the whole process. So obviously organizations like yourselves do need to protect these weak points, these misconfigurations in security posture, and detect any change that may introduce them, right? And you need to be faster than the attacker's automated searches can find them. Simple, right? But what are the most significant challenges affecting organizations' ability to identify these attacks? Well, it's familiar trio that we've been hearing for years, and many organizations are managing multiple cloud providers. You're wrangling with dozens of individual services and configurations. You have a lack of resources, and you don't have a common dashboard to manage all of this. And basically that equates to more data, more alerts, and obviously more skills being acquired with smaller teams. So can you be better prepared? After all, moving to the cloud isn't really an option for a lot of businesses, right? If you want to grow quickly, more efficiently, and obviously be more effective, especially in the current climate trying to work remotely, customers need to move to the cloud. So to achieve that goal, I would highly recommend that you deploy a cloud security posture management solution, or CSPM is the acronym you'll hear from Gartner moving forward. These tools combine and extended these disjointed services into a single pane of glass. So like in this case with Sophos Cloud Optix, which is the Sophos CSPM tool. Cloud Optix provides a complete picture of your cloud assets across multiple cloud environments, monitoring things like spend, detecting insecure cloud configuration, deployments, access anomalies, overprivileged IAM users, and checking for compliance failures around the development cycle for ongoing security to live environments. All guided with automated remediation to fix some potential issues faster. And as it's potentially a new area of security for some of you, we've also taken steps to make CSPM available or more accessible to everybody by including core set workloads from this product into our EDR solution. So if any of the customers of ADM on this call today are a server customer or already an EDR customer, you can access these services or a portion of these services today through the EDR console. Upgrade paths are available, as well as upgrades to the full Optix platform. And again, this goes beyond protection workloads for standard cloud services. As I mentioned, we're also looking at all of the platforms, including Kubernetes now. And again, we want to make this easier for you to secure your cloud servers, your data, and other workloads, regardless of which provider you're using. And actually, one question I do see actually in the chat box, which I can cover now, is can you have multiple accounts in that one single view? And the answer is yes. So the same way Central works, if you're a customer today on the call who has Azure, and then you also have an AWS deployment, or you may be looking at Kubernetes or whatever for certain projects, yes, you add them all into the console and you can view all of your cloud providers through the one pane of glass. So I hope that answers the question. With all this automated risk, profiling of security alerts, as well as customization searches and environments, this is kind of our best practice of staying ahead. So Optix will help you to easily answer questions that make your teams more efficient and more effective. So these are things like, what do I have running in the cloud? Because obviously it may not just be servers, as we mentioned before, there's storage, there's databases. Do I have, or could I potentially have, misconfigured resources that could be exploited to an attack? And also, who is able to modify these services and security settings? As well as being able to hunt for potential threats and actually access those weak points. So we can identify a overprivileged user, check their IAM resources and roles, follow those principles to ensure that you're not giving them wrong access to the wrong people. And that also is going to help avoid accessing RDP, which allows attackers to effectively kind of knock on the front door when they shouldn't, and you'll know that they're not there in the first place. And all this makes it possible to wipe out a range of avoidable security weaknesses and potential breach points when Cloud Optix is actively managed. And we're going to cover these top three, so from low-hanging fruit to more advanced areas and things like that with how you can see these. As in a view of all onboarding customers to Cloud Optix services, we're most worried about trends in organization security posture. So from exposing RDP, as we saw in the resource data earlier, to creating access roles with excessive privileges that could be exploited and misconfigure that data or storage, from unencrypted databases, which actually is potentially one of the number one I'm hearing at the moment, and shared storage, to shared storage with public access. But all of this can be wiped out. So let's go and take a look and a deeper dive in that. So first, ensure, and this is kind of the best practices that I want to leave you with today, is first ensure that RDP access is restricted from the internet. So we saw before how enabling RDP was used in our global environment earlier. The potential security problem with using RDP over the internet is that attackers can use various brute force techniques to gain access to your virtual machines. Once the attacker gains access, they can use your virtual machine as like a launch point for compromising other machines on your virtual network, or even attack network devices outside of. But as you can see here, Cloud Optix continuously scans and will alert you to issues, advise you on resources affected, and provide you with detailed guided remediation steps to disable RDP. And again, a lot of the technology within Optix is to enable you to make a decision. It's going to give you the information you need to rectify what's happening. Next, number 2 in the list is overprivileged IAM roles can also be avoided. It's all too common for new teammates especially in development teams and engineering, to be set up with privileges that they just don't need or are ever going to use. And unfortunately, we saw that in a high-profile financial firm last year, whose IAM roles and missions could be used by criminals after he left the business, and he moved around and he compromised cloud accounts. Think of it a bit like lateral movement for access. And as you can see here, the good news is that Optix starts by visualizing those relationships between users, groups, services, making it really easy to make sense of interwoven nature of individual or group accesses to services. When we start to clean up this picture, away resources with no access to services, to focus in on only those overprivileged roles. And then you can see on the right here, you can then drill down into these roles. We can identify the services not being accessed, how they were granted to update the IAM policy appropriately, and follow the privilege of basically least privilege, right? Only give them access to what they need to. Now we get to data protection. For most, it's likely to be the #1 priority in your cloud security practice. And on premise, obviously, if you lose your data, it's never a good thing. The good news is, as you've been protecting your data on premise, you can do exactly the same in the cloud. So with Sophos Central as your way to deploy and manage that protection. In the first phase of your cloud protection, most customers will typically lift and shift physical servers and turn them into virtual servers with some form of storage quota on them. But the best way to make use of your budgets, you'll likely begin to move that to data to a lower cost storage service, allowing you to basically buy virtual machines at a lower cost. But if you remember from our kind of house analogy earlier, these storage services in the cloud can't run an agent, right? You can't physically deploy a server protection tool on it, and therefore they have the potential to be misconfigured and allow public access from the internet to be attacked. So again, this is where Sophos Cloud Optix will help. First, by automatically detecting any storage, so buckets, databases, there is one more, hard drive snapshots, to give you accurate inventory, but also analyze configurations to ensure the data is encrypted and doesn't allow attackers to access them from the internet. And now we can start to bring in other elements of the Sophos portfolio. So next, we have SaaS applications, right? Often file sharing sites used as a workaround by employees within your business. Cloud application visibility will actually turn to Sophos XG into a cloud application security broker, right? A CASB tool to help you quickly identify things like shadow IT in the cloud, alerting you to kind of undesirable or unauthorized behavior to give you control back in the business and help you manage it all centrally. And then you actually need to secure that data from malicious attacks. And obviously that's where Intercept X for Server Advanced comes in. It then ensures those virtual machines or those virtual desktops running on them and auto-scaling groups are protected from the latest threats, including things like ransomware, fileless attacks, and server-specific malware. So our integrated cybersecurity system, Synchronized Security, can then take this further. This enables your firewall and virtual security to share real-time intelligence, isolating effective virtual machines from the internet and availability zones during this automatic kind of cleanup of infection process. With it, you get better protection against advanced threats, and you spend less time as the customer responding to these incidents. As a whole process, this situation takes around 8 seconds to rectify itself. And then that focus on efficiency and intuitive security management is what Sophos Security is all about. Now, as we start to wrap up, you'll be pleased to know I'm nearly done with my slides. I'd like to share our cloud security best practice from working with our own security teams internally and those of our customers, taken from the other side of their cloud migration. So number one is define your cloud security posture. Understand your cloud security provider's shared responsibility model. Understand what you are responsible for. You are generally responsible for securing anything that you run in the cloud. So use their model to build requirements and create your desired secure posture. Next, enforce test compliance with your desired posture, right? You can use platform level services from cloud providers you use. In practice, that means wrangling dozens of different services and configurations without a common dashboard. over multiple providers. That's why we would always highly recommend deploying some form of cloud security posture management tool, so the CSPM tools we talked about today, because these tools are going to combine that disjointed service into a single interface, extending them with their own intelligence, like in the case with Sophos Cloud Optix. You're going to get consistent inventory of your assets, continuous insight into your current security state as measured against specific posture and indicators of compromise. And we do have predefined rules, as well as you can create your own. The next major topic is actually to identify cloud provider platforms' shortcomings and deploy third-party solutions which are recommended by these providers to enforce such policies. A lot of the times, if you think about the Azure one, so Microsoft's version, they actually recommend third parties for things like IPS, host visibility, and enforcement of file and record level encryption. And again, I can share links after this that go to the Microsoft website where this is all highlighted from their perspective. And then lastly on the list, that continuous visibility or continuous monitoring of your environment's alerts. So basically, it'll help you stay on top of security events, and it'll make the difference between having a good security strategy and an actual secure environment that is working. So now, whether you're on this call and you've used public cloud before, you've used it for some time, or actually you're at the start of your journey, I would always start with the assumption that the attacker can or will find your cloud assets, right? It's the same as on-premise. You wouldn't go and buy a server, start a business, and not put some form of security or a firewall in the way. So if you start your migration assuming that it's findable, then we suggested you one thing. So the guys here at ADM and at Sophos are actually here to help, and we offer this project as a security assessment. So we can help you at a guided setup of the product. It's only read-only access SaaS service, so it's very low impact on your system. And we'll basically run it for 30 days, and we will check your current architecture against potential risks, potential misconfigurations, and enable you to harden your security posture and your security plans. The team can then be in touch afterwards, and we can give you a breakdown on next steps and how this can help. And obviously how you can utilize these tools better moving forward. But this is a great way to either start your journey by scanning as you migrate, or getting a level set on where you currently are. And before you continue, have I done the right things? Have I put the right processes in place? Have I made any mistakes, right? It's really easy to make a mistake. I literally had a customer the other day, and this one kind of relates to the IM roles, but they were in Google predominantly. They had a little bit in AWS, but he came to me. He was actually looking at the Optix product. He thought he only had around 100-ish instances running in the cloud. And so he ran this POC, and actually we found he had over 400, and he was shocked. When we showed him in the dashboard, what had actually happened is one of his users in the system had spun up some environments to basically do some test and dev, and it was only meant to be up for a week. And he'd actually just left it running, and he kept, every time he did a new project, rather than spinning services down, he just kept adding more and more instances. And again, using the spend monitoring feature, he realized his bill had gone like this over the last few months. And what had happened is this person who shouldn't really have had access to spin up his own environments was just constantly creating new projects. And literally nearly 300 instances were running that weren't even being used. He was being billed by Google for, because obviously from Google's perspective, they see the asset, they charge them. So not only did actually we save the customer a load of money because he figured out that he was having services, he managed to lock down that user and give him the right access so it couldn't happen again. But as I say, he reduced his licenses back to 100. He's now proactively using Optix to maintain a security posture. And his bill from Google is now down. So actually, he spent money on the product, but he's actually saving money on his cloud bill because he realized they were overusing their assets that weren't being consumed. Finally, from me, and this is the last slide you're going to hear from me before I hand back, I just want to end with a specific customer story. So with Cloud Optix, you'll basically be giving your team visibility to effectively identify and secure those gaps. And one of the big key pieces that we seem to get with cloud providers is the noise that you get from these segregated tools. So we had a customer called Shutterfly in the US who switched to Cloud Optix, and their alerts that they were getting in their console, and they are a very large enterprise, so don't let these numbers scare you, but they were getting around 280,000 alerts a month for potential configuration issues on individual servers, encryption not being turned on, all those different things. And just by running it through Optix, we were able to get that down to 700, which was then a lot more manageable for the client. Now, basically, the way that we do that is we compress alerts. So if we can see, and let's just take encryption as the really easy one here, right? If you have multiple data sources, either in Azure Blob Storage or AWS S3 buckets, etc., in the current consoles, what will happen is if you have 100 servers and every single one has storage and you've never turned encryption on, you are going to get 100 alerts, right? You're then going to look at those alerts and panic, get your engineers involved, and one by one, you're going to work your way through. What Optix does is it collates that information using AI and says, well, actually, those 100 errors are actually down to the single same issue, right? Encryption has not been turned on. So all you will see in the console from us is one alert. That one alert can then be flagged to your engineering team or your CISO, whoever it needs to be. Every business is different. And they can actually go and action that accordingly. With Optix, we can also remediate. So you could say, no, everything, because we're GDPR compliant, or we have to be, or that's PCI data, it has to be encrypted, right? So you could even remediate that specific alert and say, right, as soon as you see it, flag the alert so I know it's happened, so it's in the records, but please go turn on encryption, and Mr. Optix, go tell Azure to remediate and turn on encryption. Or you can do it manually. But again, you don't have to work your way for 100 alerts now, it's one. So one of their key reasons for buying this product is it suppressed their alerts, it made it more manageable for the team, and it enabled them to be more compliant through this process. So enough from me. We're actually going to hand back over to Andrew now at ADM, who's going to take you through a specific ADM client reference. I will be here at the end for obviously the Q&A, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Chris. And that's going to be hard to follow up with that one, I think. Yeah, so as Chris mentioned, I wanted to give you a short overview of one of our existing clients who are in the sort of the SMB mid-market space. And as you can see, they go by the name of DCB Kent, and they've been a Sophos client since 2007 and have been a keen adopter of the emerging technologies as they've been released. As Chris mentioned earlier on in the slides, as soon as Intercept X was pretty much released, DCB took it up within a month of it being on general release, because ransomware seems to be a very pertinent and key thing for us to protect against these days. And DCB saw that and saw the vision and got us to get on and test it with them. DCB have been an ADM customer for over 15 years and have worked closely with us, often carrying out live market testing, as I said, and which benefits both parties, as we're obviously constantly making suggestions through frequent testing and knowledge shares. So obviously where they may get access to a lot of the troubleshooting early, a lot of the pitfalls, and obviously we're learning that as well, it obviously benefits us, because then we can then provide a lot of the advancements to our customers and obviously ourselves as well. So that works on both sides. And you know, for the most part, as they have been one of our clients that have emerged on a lot of Sophos technologies very early on, you know, things have gone pretty smoothly, I'd say, and they're generally quite happy with the flexibility of the Sophos solution stack. And if I were to quote Paul, as it says on the screen here, you know, even when we've thrown a few curveballs into the mix, you know, ADM and Sophos have the answers that work. Yeah. And Paul's listening. He's probably absolutely mortified that I've mentioned that. I mean, I did prepare him, but yeah, he's probably going to call me afterwards and say, "Thanks, mate." Yeah. So the challenge, what were DCB facing? So as you can see, so the end date, like most businesses, I appreciate that might be slightly different because we're in the middle of a pandemic and probably going into a second wave, but future proofing for company growth was a key business challenge for the business. I mean, DCB were undergoing, and it slowed down a little bit, but you know, going steady growth, nearly 10% year on year. So the team were obviously keen to ensure any new solutions introduced would be future proofed and scale with the company as they grew and as they acquired and so on. Multi-site security. So you know, multiple sites brings the challenge of keeping security standards uniform, whilst giving all users a succinct and secure experience across all sites. And, you know, for the English speakers in the room, it's essentially more sites, more problems. We obviously want to make sure that, you know, the security at the main headquarters applies regardless of where the staff go. And this also includes temporary project sites where they can be on site for as little as 6 months or as long as 12. So DCB are a building and refurbishment firm. So a lot of their multi-sites are pop-up and temporary. And there was a solution that we built with the use of Sophos, again, architecting with their teams and our teams to make sure we could make that work. And, you know, their site managers are not scratching their heads trying to find an internet connection. We've got it secure, we've got it working. GDPR and ISO compliance, and one item I didn't put on the slide, also cyber essentials, which you're probably going to start seeing more through more government initiatives on how you could be more responsible with your system and business security. So yeah, you know, obviously at the time with the evolving GDPR conversation, and obviously keeping up with the challenges that a firm like DCB faces with regards to ISO accreditations. They've got about 4 or 5 more than we have. You know, I'm still quite impressed. I don't think we'll reach that because, you know, we don't need the environmental side. But anyway, yeah. So basically, they had some tough tasks to adhere to, and that also includes things like NIST. That also includes things like Lexel accreditations for obviously legal heads out there. So yeah, I mean, the technology solution, as you can see on the slide, pretty much DCB took on the challenge for pretty much everything that was available under the Sophos stack, especially for SMBs and mid-markets. You know, Chris said earlier, it scales, whether you're 1 to 1 million, it doesn't matter. There's always a solution for you. So if we go from the top down, you know, you've got Central InstepX for endpoint and servers. InstepX is the anti-ransomware and linear protection product that Sophos provide. And what that really meant for them as a business was, as soon as we started seeing the sensational articles in news saying everyone's been hacked and breached and ransomware and so on, we quickly knew we needed to jump on as a provider of Sophos and also a key provider to our customers to say, look, we need to supply you InstepX, you need to get it on. And it basically bolstered their antivirus position. So now when you speak to us or any security provider or any security professional worth their salt, will always be talking about antivirus and anti-ransomware as a conjoined subject. So yeah, and then and then within the perimeter. So if we go back to Chris's, you know, house slide, for the perimeter for their network, they implemented a Sophos UTM appliance. Obviously, being like the BBC, other UTM appliances are available, but they obviously saw the Sophos dream and they actually put that in, which actually meant that they could also, as Chris showed, within about 8 seconds, they could remediate any issues that will come through. Anything that came within the network was obviously pushed out to the endpoints and was controlled quite nicely. And it took care of that, what we do in the network, what we're doing off network, which is really good. Then to branch out the out of office experience, they moved on to Sophos Red, and these Red enabled devices are small little, like, let's say mini firewalls that, as long as they got an internet connection, they can broadcast the wireless that is being broadcast at the headquarters, and also push through a lot of the security settings from the main office firewall. So as I said earlier on, with regard to the temporary sites that they got running and also other offices they have running, all they either need is another firewall, depending on the size, or a Red device, literally roll it out, deploy it, plug it in, power it, put internet on it, and within a few minutes, everyone that's a DCB employee connecting to that Sophos Red, they're as if they're working in the office and they're getting all the updates back from headquarters. So for us as the IT provider, and also for them as well, as the customer, it's a central, really easy, manageable product. And you know, you're managing a lot of different areas under one dashboard, which was really, really key. Again, it was, you know, Paul saw that vision, so did I, and obviously then we worked on it, and here we are today. And last but not least, you've got Sophos Endpoint Protection and Server Advanced. That is just a fancy way of saying the antivirus protection, which is something that everyone should have anyway. So yeah, these technologies they put in, and it was a gradual process. You know, at first it was InstepX, then it was the UTM, and then we stepped it all up, and now we've got a well-oiled machine really when it comes to security. We get a lot of the alerts. DCB don't have to worry about checking log reports and so on like that they would have done previously with various disparate security solutions. Now it's all under one portal. We get all the alerts, we action it. Paul can get on and do what he needs to do, and effectively run the business with the other directors. And we step up and do our job, which is the the IT people with the magic wand that just fixes stuff. Yeah. So yeah, pretty much that pretty much is sort of DCB in a nutshell. I mean, they will be moving on to looking into the Cloud Optix side of things, or at least we'll be doing an assessment with them so that they can understand how their social and public responsibility applies when it comes to putting things into things like Microsoft 365 and other software as a service products. Also, eventually the conversation will evolve into the public cloud. And as you saw earlier on from Chris's brilliant presentation, that as much as you think it's out there, oh, it's with Microsoft, oh, it's with Google, oh, it's with Amazon, they're secure, but like your server, you've got to make sure you're being responsible, because all you've done is move your data from one place to another. You still have to make sure you're responsible with it. And yeah, that pretty much wraps that up. So yeah, thank you very much, guys, for obviously listening on. I wanted to open the floor to any questions that anybody has. And yeah, as you can see on the screen there, you've got my contact details, Andrew, and you've got Chris's. So if you do have any further queries about what's been talked about so far today, be it the on-premise conversation to cloud, or whether you're already an established cloud user, we'd love to hear from you and obviously get some assessments done. All right, let's move over to chat. Do we actually have any questions in there?
I know if you've got is there anything new that's come in towards the end you want to shout out? If not, I can go through the ones we've already got.
Nothing super new. I know you collected some pre-questions before, so a few of you were actually quite sending some stuff in. So if you go through those, Chris, if that's all right. Yeah,
no problem at all. So the first one, in fact, actually, I'll go for the more technical one first. So I alluded to obviously some compliance factors throughout the presentation, and basically the question from one of the customers was, can you use this product to basically help get compliance or audits or certain areas? So things like, can we use Optix to be GDPR, ISO 20001, PCI, etc. compliant? Can we make you compliant? The official answer is no. Can we give you the best practice and scan your infrastructure to actually get you the details you need for audits? Yes. So what we have is a lot of pre-built templates that say, this is the best practice for achieving GDPR on your infrastructure in Azure. All predefined. You will scan your infrastructure and you'll get a multitude of alerts, either red, you failed, amber, you should be fine, green, you're doing it well. You can then make the relevant changes, rescan it every 30 minutes. And that way, if you do have an audit for GDPR, then you can just print out that audit, pass it to the auditor, done, following best practice. The reason I say we don't make you GDPR compliant is it is still up to you as the customer to go and make those changes. So we will give you the information needed to be as compliant as you can. It will be your responsibility as the customer to make sure you're following and using the tools. So I hope that answers that question. One of the other questions, typical, was just around licensing. All of the products are available for Bring Your Own License. And all of the products are available for our MSP program. So actually the question wasn't specifically around Optix. They vary depending on which product you're talking about. Our server product is pretty much done per server, similar to our endpoint technologies. Obviously, the firewall just needs to be sized based on throughput and everything else, as it normally would. The Optix product is basically done on assets. So I can send you the link of exactly what constitutes an asset, but basically a server and a database is pretty much all we're looking at. And storage, sorry. And if it's Bring Your Own License, we do asset packs. So we do 25, 50, 100, etc., all the way up to several thousand. And we had someone buy a 20,000 pack the other day, huge enterprise in the US. So depending on the size of businesses that are on the call, we can scale as high as you need or as low as you need us to. And it is available on the MSP program, obviously managed via ADM, if you want to look at it on a per asset basis. So we will look at the same assets, but if you are on the start of your journey, maybe you've only got 5 so far, or actually you're using ADM as a managed service provider rather than a kind of a typical VAR, we also have that option available. There was a couple more as well. Andrew, anything else new come in before I go through the other ones?
The only one I've seen here is one that I got sent directly, was how can a customer's already got other security products by other vendors, and how, you know, are they able to start doing a lot of this alongside of it? And the answer is yes. So things like Cloud Optix, things like InterceptX, a lot of the higher tier, you know, the machine learning, the advanced security products actually kind of run alongside your likes of your McAfee's, your Symantec's and so on, and they can run in tandem and they won't interfere with what you've got already. So if it's an assessment you require, and just to understand what you've got to position it to upper members of management, or to put forward a new budget for securing your enterprise, small or large, going forward, you could still look at these services. But yeah, that's the only other one I had, Chris.
Cool. In that case, I think I've got one more, and I need to check if I answered another one during. Actually, I think I did. But one of the questions from one of the customers is we typically have to keep our data inside the region. Where's the platform being held? So hold out till the end, whoever asked that question, because I'm going to tell you no and then give you why, and it'll all make sense. So the answer is no. The Optix console, if that's what you're referring to, Central is global, so there are local subs. The Optix product is currently only hosted in the US. So the back-end platform is actually hosted on AWS, just to give you that information. And it is only in the US. The reason I say it isn't a problem, so please don't have hung up already, hopefully, is we're only pulling metadata. So we are pulling none of your data in its full form. We are not pulling any databases. We are not pulling any confidential information that would breach any of the reasons that you would not want it hosted outside of country. It's only pulling basically metacoding that is inside either the Azure, AWS, GCP, Kubernetes platform. And then we basically take that data and make it useful for you in the Optix console. So it doesn't breach any rules. We do have an FAQ that outlines that in a lot more detail, but I don't want to talk about it for 10 minutes on this call. So if obviously you are a legal firm, a law firm, one of them, actually this comes up quite often because I look after EMEA. If there's any companies that have a German office or are owned by a German firm, they are extremely strict with having stuff inside. We even have customers there. So that is how little metadata we take. Doesn't break any rules, and it's fine. Again, I can speak about you specifically in more detail after the call. Feel free to reach out to the ADM team, but we'll share the FAQs as well. And I think the other question I answered during the presentation. So as far as I can tell, Andrew, there is nothing more to go through.
There was actually one question that came in, just slid through. So yeah, hi both. We have a local cloud solution using VMware and Ubuntu for all servers. How does the Sophos product sit with Linux?
So it supports Linux. It does depend which product you're talking about, just to be clear. But Optix, as long as actually it's being hosted in one of those providers, so AWS or Azure, then it would look. The Optix product only looks at public cloud. So if it's your own private cloud where you're using VMware, then the Optix product wouldn't work. It's only available for public cloud deployments. If you're referring to the actual protection products, right, your InterceptX for servers, your EDRs, then yes, we'll support Linux as well. I think if I understood the question right.
No, I believe you got it. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess because if there's no more questions, I think we might just draw it to a close there. Thank you all for turning up. Really appreciate your time as always. And yeah, we'll follow up all of you with obviously the questions. But if you have any more, our contact details are on screen here. Obviously, our LinkedIn profiles are there. Please feel free to reach out, ask us any questions, and we'll take it from there.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the opportunity, ADM. It's always a pleasure speaking to you and your customers.
Same to you, Chris. We keep meeting like this, don't we? We keep meeting like this.
Always.